So, when you hear the word economics, what pops into your head? For a lot of us, it's charts, graphs, maybe the stock market. But what if I told you that's just scratching the surface? Economics is really a story. It's this incredible, sprawling quest that we've been on for centuries, trying to answer the biggest questions there are. How do we create wealth? How do we organize ourselves as a society? How do we build a better, more prosperous world for everyone? I absolutely love this quote from Joan Robinson because it just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? Economics isn't just some stuffy subject for a classroom. No way. It's a powerful force that shapes our world every single day. And understanding it, really getting it, is like getting a new pair of glasses to see everything more clearly. That's what we're going to do here. Give you the keys to unlock that understanding. All right, so here's the game plan. First, we're going to look at why economics is all over the news right now. Then, we'll rewind and trace the big ideas right back to the beginning. We'll get into the birth of capitalism, the tricky business of measuring wealth, the epic ideological battles of the 20th century, and then we'll peek into the future to see where it's all headed. So let's start with right here, right now. Because, economics isn't some dusty old topic anymore. It's literally front page news, and it's affecting our lives in ways that are impossible to ignore. And you can't get much more relevant than this. There's this kind of crazy irony, right? The word economics itself, it comes from ancient Greek. But just a few years ago, a massive debt crisis in Greece sent shockwaves around the entire planet and made people question another Greek invention, democracy. It's just this powerful reminder that economic problems are never, ever just about the money. They're about power, they're about how we live together, and they're about what we value most. So to really get a handle on today's headlines, we have to go back. Way back. Before all the complex models and data, the earliest thinkers were wrestling with some really basic but totally profound questions. Just take the idea of private property. Who owns what? This debate has been raging for more than 2,000 years. You had Plato saying everything should be held in common. Then the Romans came along and legally defined an individual's right to own a thing. Centuries later, John Locke argued that if you mix your labor with something, it's yours. And then Karl Marx comes in and says, nope. Let's get rid of private property altogether. You can see how this one single idea is the seed for these huge ideological battles that are going to define everything later on. Okay, let's fast forward to the Industrial Revolution. This was the moment when all those debates just exploded. You can think of it like the Big Bang for modern economics. It created a brand new world, and that world needed brand new explanations. And it definitely sparked some powerful critiques. Now, one of the most powerful ideas to come out of this whole period was David Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage. Here's the key thing to get. It's not about what you're best at doing, in absolute terms. It's about what you're relatively best at. What do you give up the least to produce? This one insight became the absolute bedrock for the idea of global free trade. Let's make this super simple. Imagine a skilled worker. She's better at making both hats and shoes than another guy. So should she just do both herself? Ricardo's answer is a big no. Let's say she's way better at making shoes. That's her comparative advantage. The other worker, well, he's less bad at making hats. So if she specializes in just shoes and he specializes in just hats, and then they trade, boom. They both end up with more stuff than if they had tried to do everything themselves. The total amount of hats and shoes in the world actually goes up. It's kind of weird when you first hear it, but it's a revolutionary idea. And if you think this is some dusty old theory that doesn't matter, think again. The smartphone in your pocket is comparative advantage in action. The design is done in the US, the processors come from South Korea, the screen from Japan, and it's all put together in China. Each country does the part it's most efficient at. That's Ricardo's 18th century idea explaining your entire 21st century global supply chain. Pretty wild. So as these big ideas were developing, something else started to happen. Economics began to shift. There was this new, powerful desire to move beyond just philosophical arguments and to turn economics into a real science, something based on hard data, on measurement, on numbers. And the guy who really kicked this all off was William Petty, way back in the 1600s. He had this idea he called political arithmetic. And his whole point was, hey, if we want to actually understand things like taxes and trade and wealth, we have to stop just talking about them and start measuring them. This was a radical idea for its time, and it basically laid the foundation for all of modern economics. And the end result of this whole quest for a number? It's a term you hear constantly, GDP. gross domestic product. It was developed in the 1930s by Simon Kuznets, and it's basically the total value of everything a country makes and sells in a year. This one single number became the world's default measurement for progress and success. But that leads to a really important question, doesn't it? If GDP is going up, does that automatically mean people are happier? Well, an economist named Richard Easterlin looked into it, and he found something fascinating. Turns out, once your basic needs are met, more national income doesn't really translate to more happiness. They call it the Easterlin paradox. And it started this huge ongoing debate about whether we're even measuring the right thing. All right, so all of this sets the stage for the heavyweight championship of the 20th century, because huge crises, especially the Great Depression, forced this massive clash of ideas about one central question: what exactly is the government supposed to do in the economy? And this one question gave us two giants with completely opposite answers. In one corner, you had John Maynard Keynes. Looking at the horror of the Great Depression, he said the government has to step in. When the economy tanks, the government's job is to spend money, create demand, and put people back to work. But in the other corner, you had Friedrich Hayek. And for him, government planning wasn't the cure, it was the disease. He called it the road to serfdom that would crush freedom. He believed only the spontaneous order of the free market could ever coordinate a complex society. And this wasn't just a debate in a book. This was the blueprint for the New Deal, for the welfare state, and for the free market revolutions of the 80s. This argument has defined our politics for 100 years. So, where does that leave us today? Well, the story is far from over. In our crazy interconnected world, economists are now grappling with a whole new set of really complex problems that need new answers. A great way to think about this is what economist Donny Roderick calls the globalization trilemma. He says, look, you can have any two of these three things: deep economic integration, a powerful nation-state, and real democracy. But you can never have all three. Think about it. If you join a giant free trade deal, that's deep integration. You might have to follow rules that your own people didn't vote for. Well, there goes some of your democracy, right? Suddenly, real-world events like Brexit or those huge fights over trade deals start to make a lot more sense. And the quest for answers is pushing forward on so many other fronts. Economists are finally questioning that old idea that we're all perfectly rational little robots. They're asking, why do some countries get the right rules of the game for growth, while others get stuck? And coming full circle, they're searching for better ways to measure what actually matters: our well-being, sustainability, our happiness, not just GDP. It's really exciting stuff. So from Plato's ideas about a perfect society all the way to our global supply chains today, economics has always been this epic story about our biggest challenges. It's about wealth, sure, but it's also about fairness, happiness, and at the end of the day, survival. It's a story that's still being written, which leaves us with the big question to chew on. What's the next great economic idea going to be?